By mid-2026, the kidnapping industry in Nigeria has institutionalized into a multi-billion Naira shadow economy, operating with established supply chains and decentralized financial networks. In the first 3 months of the year alone, armed networks abducted at least 1,100 individuals. This chart tracks the financial flow. The annual ransom pool is projected to reach 24.2 billion Naira, with the average payout rising to 4.5 million per incident. This revenue is driven by operational volume, with 215 mass abductions projected this year. Once concentrated in the rural north, these networks have expanded into the southern half of the country, establishing active cells in economic hubs like Lagos. This geographic and financial scaling suggests a systemic industry that now actively competes with the state for territorial control. To maintain these margins, syndicates have adopted a high-volume business model. They prioritize vulnerable populations, commuters, petty traders, and rural workers, who can be seized quickly and in large numbers. Schools have become primary strategic targets today. By abducting children, kidnapping cells gain immediate leverage over both families and the government, ensuring their demands receive national attention. To manage these negotiations, armed groups have bypassed state media blackouts by taking their messaging directly to social media. They broadcast raw footage of hostage torture and executions, including the on-camera death of an Oyo State teacher, posting the content to public platforms like YouTube and WhatsApp. This direct transmission creates unmediated psychological pressure. It forces families and labor unions to bypass the state's silence and demand immediate concessions to save captives. By turning hostage trauma into viral content, kidnappers sidestep state censorship and use public outrage as a tool for financial extraction. Despite massive military deployments across the Federation, the state has failed to dismantle the kidnap economy. Current strategy relies on kinetic bias, a preference for reactive military sweeps rather than localized intelligence policing. This approach leaves security vacuums the moment troops depart. Highly mobile syndicates exploit these gaps, using the country's vast, unmonitored forest reserves as operational sanctuaries between raids. This operational failure is compounded by institutional decay. In May 2026, authorities arrested several senior police officers in River State for operating their own kidnapping and extortion ring. Attempting to dry up the syndicate's funding, the federal government enacted laws criminalizing the payment of ransoms, but the policy backfired. Negotiations have simply moved underground, utilizing burner phones and untraceable crypto stablecoins, effectively blinding state intelligence agencies. The state is unable to hold physical territory, and its regulatory framework is now inadvertently shielding the kidnappers' financial networks. The macroeconomic damage is compounding. Abduction risks have forced farmers to abandon 35% of cultivated land in the northwest and north-central regions, driving domestic food inflation to historic levels. The educational sector is likewise fracturing. Targeted raids have triggered preemptive school closures and nationwide teacher strikes, leaving millions of children without access to formal education. International fallout has been swift. The U.S. Department of State elevated travel warnings and authorized the departure of non-emergency embassy personnel from Abuja, citing the declining security environment. The kidnap economy is no longer just a threat to individuals. It is hollowing out Nigeria's sovereign and economic foundations. Because state security cannot guarantee safety, independent risk mitigation has become a mandatory operational cost. Organizations must conduct vulnerability audits of transit routes and project sites. Second, they must establish encrypted communication protocols to bypass security leaks. Third, high-profile individuals require strict executive protection against urban profiling. Finally, teams must develop incident management plans before an abduction occurs. Until the state addresses the root economic drivers of this crisis, proactive private defense remains the only viable strategy for survival.